I'd just like to make the point that we're very fortunate that His Majesty has allowed us to use Buckingham Palace for this event, and I need to say that.
There's a red box in Buckingham Palace that holds the most classified secrets in Britain, and only one person is supposed to ever open it. That person is the monarch. So why are reports now suggesting it has quietly ended up in the hands of Princess Anne instead of the woman who actually sits beside the king? What you're about to hear isn't some ceremonial reshuffle that means nothing. According to royal watchers, this could be one of the most significant power shifts inside the British monarchy in decades, and almost nobody is talking about it. And the most stunning part of all, it reportedly came at Queen Camilla's expense. Stay with me, because once you understand what this actually means, you'll never look at the royal hierarchy the same way again. Let's start with that red box, because everything hinges on it. In the language of the Crown, this isn't just a fancy leather case. It's said to contain the secret intelligence briefings, the state papers, and the documents that decide which laws get signed and which don't. Whoever controls access to that box is, in practical terms, holding the real levers of constitutional authority. We're not talking about smiling for cameras at a garden party. We're talking about who sees the secrets, who shapes the decisions, who actually steers the ship when the waters get rough. And if the reports are accurate, that quiet power has shifted toward Anne, while Camilla has been left on the outside looking in. So the obvious question becomes, why would King Charles make a move like that? Here's where it gets uncomfortable for the Queen. Camilla is married to the King. She stands beside him at nearly every public event. By appearance, she's one of his closest companions on the planet. And yet, when it comes to the genuine machinery of running the nation, sources suggest she's been deliberately kept at arm's length. This wasn't a clerical mistake or an awkward oversight. By all accounts, it was a calculated choice, and to understand why Charles would choose that path, you have to understand the pressure he's reportedly under right now. The King has been remarkably open about facing his own serious health battle, and that openness changes everything. You simply cannot have a monarch undergoing ongoing treatment while also single-handedly carrying the daily weight of governing. Something has to give. So the real question the palace allegedly faced was this: who steps into that gap? On paper, the answer seems obvious. Prince William is the heir, the future king, the natural choice to absorb extra duties while his father recovers. So why didn't the responsibility land on his shoulders? The answer says a lot about just how stretched the next generation already is. Think about William's life as it actually stands. Catherine has been navigating her own deeply serious health journey and recovery, a situation that has gripped the entire country. William has 3 young children who need their father present, grounded, and emotionally available. He's already carrying the invisible burden of knowing the throne is coming for him one day. Now imagine piling the relentless grind of running the monarchy on top of all that. Royal commentators suggest it would simply crush him. No single person could shoulder fatherhood, a recovering spouse, the weight of being heir, and the daily operation of the crown all at once. So instead of leaning on his son, Charles reportedly turned to someone the public underestimates at their peril, his sister. And the reasoning behind that choice is where this story turns from interesting to genuinely brilliant. Why Anne? Because she may be the single most perfectly suited person in the entire family for exactly this moment. She's only 2 years younger than Charles, which means she lived through the very same political eras, knew the same world leaders, and witnessed the precedents being set rather than reading about them in a briefing. That's the kind of instinct you cannot manufacture overnight, and it's priceless when an institution is under strain. But here's the factor that almost nobody considers, the one that quietly makes her untouchable. Anne, by all accounts, has zero ambition for the throne. And that single fact may be the most powerful card she holds. Want to know why having no ambition is actually her greatest weapon? Consider the system she grew up inside. Under the old rules of male preference succession, Anne kept getting pushed further down the line every time a brother arrived, simply because she was a woman. It was unfair and outdated, and the rules have since changed. But here's the twist nobody expected. That very exclusion is exactly what makes her the perfect figure to hold influence now. She has no realistic path to the crown and reportedly no desire for one. So when Anne walks into a room and carries a message between the king and the prime minister, no one whispers that she's playing an angle. There's no faction lurking behind her, no rival camp using her to undermine Charles. She's seen as the honest broker, trusted precisely because she has nothing to gain. The government reportedly trusts her, the public adores her, and most crucially, the king trusts her completely. But that trust didn't appear out of thin air. It was built over decades, and the person who built it might surprise you. That architect was Queen Elizabeth herself. For much of the second half of the 20th century, whenever the Commonwealth faced genuine instability or a delicate crisis, Elizabeth didn't send the royals chasing glamorous photo opportunities. She sent Anne. She trusted her daughter with real autonomy, real decisions, and the authority to act for the crown when the Queen couldn't be there in person. That was effectively a decades-long masterclass in statecraft, conducted under the most intense conditions imaginable. So by the time Elizabeth was contemplating the shape of her son's future reign, she had already forged Anne into exactly the kind of figure the monarchy would need in a storm. And then, in her final months, she reportedly made one quiet legal move that locked the whole thing into place. In late 2022, as the Queen approached the end of her life, she orchestrated an amendment to the Regency Acts through Parliament, adding both Anne and Edward as working councillors of state for life. It sounds like dry legal housekeeping, but it was anything but. The existing roster of people who could legally exercise the monarch's powers had quietly become a problem. Harry had stepped away from royal duties and moved to California. Andrew had become politically unusable after his own well-documented scandals. That left a dangerous gap. If Charles ever couldn't govern, the people technically next in line were precisely the ones he wouldn't want anywhere near real power. Elizabeth solved it permanently and airtightly, sidelining Harry and Andrew in a way no one could challenge. She was essentially building a safety net for her son before she was even gone. But this wasn't the only signal she'd been quietly sending for years. Long before any of this, Anne had been collecting honours that hinted she was rising into a tier all her own. Back in 1987, Elizabeth named her the Princess Royal, an ancient designation that only one person can hold at a time, traditionally reserved for the monarch's eldest daughter. It's not a polite family gift, it carries an unspoken expectation of lifelong service to the crown, a formal stamp declaring this person essential to how the dynasty functions. Then in 1996 came her investiture as a Knight of the Thistle, Scotland's highest order of chivalry, and that wasn't decorative either. Anne had spent years doing real, demanding work across Scotland and the Commonwealth, embedding herself in the genuine welfare of communities rather than just appearing for the cameras. And when the coronation arrived in 2023, Charles made a choice that stunned those paying attention. He named Anne his gold stick in waiting, a centuries-old role entrusted to whoever the monarch relies on for personal protection. There she was, in full military uniform, riding on horseback directly behind the gold state coach through the streets of London. That was Charles putting his trust on public record in front of the entire world. So what does it tell you when a king places his own safety symbolically in the hands of his sister? The elevation hasn't stopped with Anne alone. Her husband, Timothy Lawrence, has reportedly been raised right alongside her. Timothy entered the royal household in the mid-1980s as a young naval officer chosen to serve as equerry to Queen Elizabeth. He never chased fame or demanded attention. He simply observed the machinery up close and quietly supported Anne through one of the most punishing schedules in the family. Elizabeth noticed. In 2011, she made him a Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, her personal thank you for loyal service. But Charles reportedly went further, elevating Timothy to Knight Grand Cross, the very highest rank in that order. That honour comes directly from the king himself, entirely separate from any government process. It's a deeply personal statement. I see what you've done, I know what you mean to my sister, and I'm placing you in the innermost circle. And yet, beneath all of these honours sits a far older story, one that makes the tension with Camilla almost impossible to ignore. Rewind to the early 1970s, long before Camilla ever became queen, Anne, it's widely reported, shared a genuine connection with Andrew Parker Bowles, the man Camilla would later marry. Anne and Andrew bonded over a shared passion for horses and the equestrian world, a connection many describe as powerful. But it reportedly couldn't survive the constraints of the time, partly due to religious barriers around marriage, and so it ended. Anne went on to marry Mark Phillips, a union that ultimately didn't last, before finding lasting stability with Timothy, the man who had quietly stood by her all along. That partnership is what reportedly allows Anne to function at full throttle. She carries out more than 450 engagements a year, more than almost any other working royal, with Timothy supporting her and asking for nothing in return. So when you see Camilla allegedly shut out from the red box while Anne ascends, there's a tangled history humming underneath it all. Doesn't that make this far more than a simple administrative decision? The British public, it seems, has already made up its mind. Recent opinion polls reportedly place Anne right at the summit of royal popularity, sitting alongside Catherine and the cherished memory of Elizabeth. People view her as the family's hardest worker, the one who shows up and does the job without demanding applause. They don't see her rise as a power grab, they see it as overdue justice. And that sentiment crystallized in a remarkable moment from the BBC documentary about Charles's coronation year. In that film, Anne did something royals rarely do. She was raw and honest. She spoke about her mother's final days at Balmoral, revealing that Elizabeth had worried about dying there because of the chaos it might create for the government and the family, and that Anne simply told her to spend her last days exactly where she wished. Then came the moment that moved a nation, Anne describing the imperial state crown being lifted from her mother's coffin, and the strange wave of relief she felt, not from any lack of love, but from the understanding that her mother's decades-long burden of duty had finally been set down. That single moment of honesty made the country see her differently. So why does that vulnerability matter so much for the role she now holds? Because it reveals exactly why she fits. Anne isn't someone who pretends everything is fine when it isn't. She doesn't hide behind ceremony, and the younger generation has noticed. William and Catherine have both reportedly made clear how deeply they respect her, with William said to view his aunt as a kind of shield for the entire family, someone whose integrity is so unquestionable that it protects everyone around her from relentless scrutiny. They've deliberately stepped back to let her shine at major events, signaling they see no rivalry, only respect. And William understands the quiet gift in this arrangement. With Anne handling the heavy administrative lifting, he gains the space to be a father, a husband, and eventually a future king, without having to be all three at once right now. It's a smart distribution of power, and he reportedly knows it. But what does all of this mean for the woman who actually wears the title of queen? That's the part that's become almost impossible to ignore. Camilla still sits beside Charles at every state occasion and still holds the title of queen consort. But beneath the surface, she's reportedly excluded from the things that carry real weight. No red box, no classified briefings, no signing of state documents. And lingering behind all of it is the long shadow of Diana, a chapter the public has never fully laid to rest. So imagine watching Anne celebrated by the nation and elevated by the king, while you remain a ceremonial presence beside him. What must that quiet realization feel like? That's a story for another day, and it's one you won't want to miss. What makes this moment so fascinating is how completely the monarchy has reinvented itself. The old playbook was to project flawless perfection, to pretend the royals floated above ordinary human struggle. Charles and Catherine have torn that script up. He has spoken openly about his health. She has been candid about her recovery. And in that spirit of honesty, positioning Anne at the center of the institution's day-to-day survival isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Charles appears to be saying he needs to share the burden with someone he trusts entirely, and that someone is his sister. The image of Anne standing ready to open the red box, to guide the state through whatever comes next, has become genuinely reassuring, because in a moment of uncertainty, she is the one constant everyone can rely on. She'll show up, she'll do the work, and she'll never seek glory from it. If this story pulled you in, you need to see what we've uncovered next about the real reason Camilla has reportedly been kept away from the heart of royal power, and the Diana shadow that allegedly still haunts every step she takes. Tap that video on screen now before it disappears from your feed. This is Royal Pulse, where whispers around the crown come to light.